Here we are. Let's rack this up here. There we go. Hey. Oh. Get myself situated here so I can see this other screen. 7 o'clock. Don't see anybody yet, so I'll give the room a second to populate, then we'll start rolling. All right, there we go. See some people coming in. As always, if you're coming in through the Tour of Idaho Facebook page or through the motorcyclejazz.com Facebook page, be sure to give StreamYard your credentials so I see your name. If you don't know how to do that or there's any question about whether or not it works, just put your name at the end of any comment that you make so that I and any guest that might pop up know who you are if you ask a question. Just got back from a week vacation, had a really good time driving into the middle of the country, went all the way over to South Dakota. Spent most of our time at Devil's Tower. Hello, Brent. Had an opportunity hello, Sean, to visit with some old friends. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit. My first summer after the Tour of Idaho is done, I've got that whole summer devoted to something. It's my 50th high school anniversary, and I plan on making it to that. But I think I'm going to ride my bicycle there. I have a friend. One of the reasons we went to South Dakota is I have a friend, high school classmate, super good dude. Really liked him back in high school. Good athlete. I played football with him. He spent his career in the Marines. Had to have both knees replaced. And to celebrate his mobility again, he's riding his bicycle across the country. Hello, Andrew. So I've always wanted to do that. I've wanted to do that since I was in high school, and I used to ride my bicycle everywhere. So the first summer after the Tour of Idaho is over, I'm going to devote that summer to riding my bicycle from Oregon to Virginia, right across the country. And hello, Scott, and you are welcome. And but I want to do a little bit different twist on it. I think instead of buying a road bike and doing it all on roads, I think what I want to do is do a lot of it in gravel. So I'm not going to quite do a backpacking kind of thing because I don't have time for that. I got to get this all in a summertime. I can't leave my wife and young kids forever. But I would like to ride a lot of I know in the West, the route that my friend took is not the route that I would have taken at all. There are way better ways to go. They even rode down interstates part of the way. So I think I'm probably going to get a gravel bike and build it up so that I can spend about, maybe do an 80-20 split or something. But anyway, that's my summer of 2024. I'm going to ride my bicycle across North America. And my buddy from high school that I met in South Dakota really pumped me up. He's having a good time doing it. I was supposed to have a guest tonight, but the fella that was going to be here indicated he might have some trouble. He's at a conference right now, and he's probably out to dinner with his conference mates. If he pops up later, we'll put him in. But I won't count him in tonight. We'll try to bring him in next week. And he's a fella that runs he's the manager of Carl Malone Power Sports down in Haley, which I indicated to you previously we're going to put on the Tour of Idaho. So there's a place in the middle of that day that goes from Mackey to Smoky Bar Store, which is a short day. You can ride about 12 miles down to Slab and go into Haley, and there's a really good power sports store there. They've indicated a great interest in working with you guys. We're hooking them up with Golden Tires, but you can order up anything you want there. They'll get you in and out that day. They'll try to get you in and out as quick as they can. The only thing you have to do is you have to make an appointment. So you're going to need to let them know that you're coming. If you want a specific type of tire that they don't have, you're going to have to call them. We'll put all that information out there for you. We'll give you contact information and everything else. I'll put it up on the Motorcycle Jazz pages, and I'll also put it up on the Tour of Idaho Facebook group. And I'll have Josh himself come on at some point and tell you all about it. But they're really excited about meeting you guys. I told them there will be somewhere between 50 and 100 of you showing up sometime throughout July and August, and they're pretty pumped. They're excited about it. They went on, looked at the website, looked at the whole Tour of Idaho. They think it's great, and I think that it's going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Is that Jeffrey Jensen I see there as anonymous Facebook user? Oh, gosh, even Facebook won't have anything to do with that guy anymore. I don't know what the deal is. Uh, nice shirt, Martin. That's got to be one of those guys that were on this team. Your mom team last year was another one of these teams like the Buckeyes that comes along every few years, and you laugh at their antics, and they were awesome dudes. So I hope that is one of those guys down there saying hey. And take it that is Jeffrey Jensen. So hello, Jeff Jensen. Justin Reed, how you doing? So let's just go through tonight challenge points, and I want to talk a little bit about the rationale behind the challenge points, why they are. A little bit about specifically why I chose the ones that I did. And just to tell you a little bit about people get kind of apprehensive about these challenge points, and I think more so than they need to be, because you're going to get the challenge point if you're on the route. So it's not like you got to go look off in the bushes for it or anything. They're almost all right on the trail. You're going to roll right over them. And the photographs that we want, hello, David, are, if you're anywhere close to it, that's just fine. It's not like a geocache where you got to locate the exact spot and snap a picture of yourself. The other question that comes up a lot is, well, we can either take a picture of ourselves or we could take a picture of the scenery. We can't do both. Well, yeah, you can. Snap one of each. It doesn't matter to me. This is meant to be kind of a fun element to the tour. And a little bit about the history of it, and when we first started doing a tour of Idaho, we just said, here's the route, ride the whole thing, and you get a jersey number. And, of course, people didn't do that. They claimed they did. Well, we rode 90% of it. Where's our jersey number? And that 90% was actually, 60%, and they'd skipped all the hard stuff. Guys, we had a whole crew of guys show up from Florida once, and I think the smallest bike was probably a GS 1100, and they claimed they rode 90% of the whole thing. Well, no, you didn't. So we started identifying, places where we wanted you to snap a picture just to verify that you'd actually been there. And this was before we started the actual tracking. People would turn in track logs that were obviously bogus. They've been created after the fact. And so then we did the live tracking, and that kind of pushed back on that. And then we decided to make the challenge points or the challenge trails just go away because you didn't need them anymore. We had live tracking, and people said, no, that was one of our favorite parts of the whole experience. There was something about, you got to get this challenge point that kind of made it cool. It sort of added a scavenger hunt kind of an aspect to it. And I thought about it a little bit, and I said, I think I kind of get that, because I remember when I was climbing a lot, there were places on it. There's a book called 50 Classic Climbs in North America, and I'm proud of the fact that I've done most of the routes in that book. And one of the cool things is that you would get to the place in the book where they had taken the picture of that route, and you would take a photograph of yourself there. And that was kind of a cool element of it. You're climbing some of the stuff out in the desert, and all of a sudden, boom, you're putting your hand in the exact same place that Leighton Core put his hand. So I get all that. There's sort of some history to it. You kind of know these guys that I certainly look up to in my climbing career and in the Tour of Idaho. These guys. We had a guy, Aaron Stafford, last week, summited on Denali, Tour of Idaho vet. How cool is that? So when you reach these spots, the kind of cool thing about it is there's a bit of shared communal history there, because you're snapping a photo in the same place where all these other guys that earned a jersey number before you did the exact same thing. And I try not to change them very much from year to year. There are certain ones that are classic, and as the route has evolved, I've changed them a little bit, but we try not to remove any. We keep the ones that we've had, and we just keep kind of adding to it from year to year. So that's how the challenge points came to be. It was kind of in the beginning, it was there to ensure that you had stayed on the route. Then when that no longer became necessary because of the combination of live tracking and of the requirement that you submit tracks, we could sort of reconcile those things and make sure you hadn't pulled a fast one on us. We wanted to, the first thought was, well, let's just ditch these. And everybody said, no. So challenge points are there by popular demand. Now, you do have to get the challenge points, but it's because they're on trails that you have to ride in order to complete the Tour of Idaho. And as always, if there's a challenge point that's in the middle of a fire area, we don't require that one anymore. We'll take it off. Now, if you just can't get to it, that's okay too. That's not fatal, but you have to make it up somehow. There's a certain number of challenge points that are required depending upon the size of your team, and you got to get them somehow. So it's okay to miss one that's required. That's not a disqualification or anything, but you will have to make that up by getting a bonus one or riding an extra bonus section. Generally speaking, one bonus section is equal to a challenge point if it's a 1-point bonus section. So in the past, when things have been closed by fire, most of the time I just say, well, those aren't required anymore. But if I give you a trail around that we haven't used before, then I'll say, but I want you to go right out to this place, and we'll count that as a new challenge point. So that stuff evolves as the tour goes along, as fires crop up, as trails close, and things like that. Again, if a trail is closed for any reason other than an official reason, you just can't get across it, you're going to have to I guarantee you have to make that up. But if it's closed by fire, then we'll figure out something to do. If it's just 1 or 2 trails, I'll just make those challenge points go away. If it's a lot, like it was last year, we'll come up with alternatives and alternative challenge points or ways to earn those points so that the numbers won't change. Trying to think if there's anything else I can think of in a preemptory sense, and I really don't think there is. So let's just get down to it. Well, okay, once again, these challenge points are mostly easy to find, and do not sweat that you're standing in exactly the right spot. Sometimes there's a waypoint associated with the challenge point. A lot of times it's just, I say, it's a scenic view between these 2 waypoints somewhere. You're going to know it when you get there. These challenge points are all in places that are kind of cool. So all you got to be is anywhere close, and it's just fine. The photograph or the selfie and or the scenery photograph that you're required to upload, if you don't have phone service at the time, don't worry about it. Your phones will work in many places. And at the end of almost every day, you're at a place where your phone will work. The exception to that is Lowell, Idaho. In Lowell, the cell phone reception is so terrible there, even on the internet, you're not going to have any kind of texting services. You'll have to text me through your POB, and that's the way I'll contact you in places like that. But every place else, you can upload them. Try to upload them immediately. That's always best because it kind of makes it fun for the people that are tracking you if they see when you got up on this challenge point. But if not, you can just upload them at the end of the day. And there are... when we get to the mystery sections, I'll tell you how we're going to treat all that stuff. We'll just go all through that stuff tonight, and if you have any questions, just fire away as you get there. So on day 1, I'm looking at the challenge point pages right now, and there's 7 challenge points required for the, hello, Ralph, 7 for the soloists, 8 for 2-person teams, and 9 for 3-person teams. Now, the first one's at the Utah-Idaho border, and it's right where the sign exists, the Tour of Idaho sign that Shane Johnson put up many, many years ago, a dozen years ago or so. That's the first one. So just roll up there, get yourself a picture, selfie next to the sign, and it'll probably be taken in the dark if you're smart. The second one is the Westin Peak Rock Slide, and there's actually a photo of it there. The photo that I have is not the way it looks now because that gets worked on a little bit more every year. Jim Spooner, you'll know it when you see it unless you're asleep. It's the truth. The non-waypoint challenge points, they're in places where you're going to want to stop and take a photograph anyway. Jim's point, he emphasized that perfectly. So the second one is the Westin Peak Rock Slide. Again, there's a photograph of it on the challenge point page, but that's not the way it looks now. It's much wider now than it used to be. By the way, that you can stop there anywhere and take the photo. You don't have to be right in the middle of the sketchy section to get the photo. If there's several of you, just take a photo of somebody who's starting to ride up it. These days, it's like it looks like it's about 6 inches wide in that photo, and that's the way it was a dozen years ago when I took that photo. But recently, the thing is like 3 feet wide now, so it's a little less adventurous than it needs to be, or it used to be. But you don't want to fall off there because if you start tumbling down that shaly rock right there, you're going to go quite a ways. And there are some people that have actually performed that experiment for you, so you don't have to speculate. I can tell you you're going to be there for a while if your bike starts tumbling down that shale, so don't do that. Next one is Oxford Peak on day 1, and you got to walk to that one. So you get off your bike. Do not ride your bike to the top of Oxford Peak. That'll get us all in a lot of trouble. It can be done, but I don't want you to do it. I want you to park where it says to park in the route description and hike. It's a very, very short hike. It's really pretty. You should be getting there right around sunup. There's a big flag. Brett Asper goes up there every year and replaces that flag, and you'll dig the little hike out there and back. Let's see. Oh, darn it. Lost my screen here. There we go. Okay. The next one is in Kent's Canyon, and Kent's Canyon is only on the 2 and 3 person route, so it's not required for soloists. And it's right at the top of Kent's Canyon. You get up, you go through a couple of switchbacks right above some of the nasty rocky stuff, and right at the top there's a little crest up there. That's where it is. There's an Elkhorn Crest one, and that's just right up at the top of the ridge there. That's on the 3 person route. Fence line trail, everybody does that. There's just a waypoint there, and it's in kind of a cool spot. It's got a nice view. Robbers Roost on the Portneuf Crest. If you take the challenge section, you'll get there coming from east to west. If you take the normal route, you'll get there going from west to east, so you get it either way. Ingham Pass, there's a really nice place right up at the top. Again, an obvious spot. And finally, the Tour of Idaho flagpole. That's your last challenge point for the day. Now, notes on day one, challenge point rules. There are 4 bonus sections. The A is worth a half a point. That's the little steep hill climb that gets you, that sort of bypasses a lot of the bumpy stuff on that initial big hill climb up to the top of, Buck Peak. A few years ago, when I first put that on, that hill climb was a booger. I mean, I would have told everybody, do not do that. It's not what you want to do. Now, it's still steep, and it's still going to stress you on a tour bike. Oh, Baldy. Thank you, Jeff. It's still going to stress you on a tour bike, but what's happened is enough people have been up there now that the original route just went straight up to the ridge, and it was just insane. I mean, everybody looped their bike a couple of times trying to get up there when we first went up and started doing that. But what people have done is they've done sort of a bypass that goes off to the left, back to the south, and it hooks up to the original route in a fairly reasonable spot. Now, where it hooks into the regular route is right in the middle of a big hill climb, and so you enter it with zero momentum. So what you may end up having to do is ride back down that hill a little way, turn around and get started to get a good going start at it. But it's enough extra effort that it's worth at least a half a point. So if you want to do that alternative, I put it on there for a half a point. The B, which we discussed when we talked about day one, is there's a loop there that you can do. You have to do the Westin Peak rock slide twice if you do it. But it's kind of a cool loop. It's mostly single track, and the double track that's on it's pretty cool stuff. It's kind of technical. It's not completely easy, and I think you'll like it. The C is for soloists. It's also a half a point. It's just you duck up this creek a little bit and come back out. And then finally, D is 1 point. And where did I put D? Where is that? I'd have to look at the map again. Where in the heck did I put D on that day? Somebody tell me that's read the route description. I don't have it up in front of me right now. Let me see if I can pull a map up here. Forget about it. I don't know where the D is on day one, but there is a 4th bonus section on day one, and I made it worth a point. So if I say it's worth a point, it's worth a point. Now, again, on day one, doing these bonus sections, you have to be in Pocatello by midnight. And Reed Canyon. If you just do Reed Canyon, thank you, David. If you just do Reed Canyon, that's worth a point. You get up to the top, and then you go down. I think it's Bob Smith, back down to the Boundary Trail. That's worth a point. Reed Canyon gets a bad rap. It's steep, but it's rideable. I mean, you can get up it. Jimmy rode up with one hand holding his GoPro down by his wheels. There's a couple of nasty roots up there. And whenever I ride it, if I don't think, it changes from year to year. And if I don't think I can clear those root clusters, what I do is just get off, huck my bike up over them, get back on, and you're starting with no momentum, but you can get going if you slip your clutch a little bit. And it's really not that bad. To me, the bad part's right at the top. There's a really high energy switchback up near the top. So will it give you all you want on a loaded tour bike? Yes. But a lot of people say, well, if you do that, you might as well do the challenge section. I'm here to assure you that is not true. Because getting up Reed is not necessarily the most difficult part of that challenge section. Getting across Girl Scout Camp Trail and then getting up over Robbers Roost the other way. There's some big rock steps and some of that stuff that will challenge you. There's some side hilling in there that has bitten some people. Some of the strongest riders I know have gotten back in there on warm days, and they were about wiped out by the time they got to Pocatello. So be careful of that. So there's some notes for day one, too. Challenge point rules. If you're a returning team or if you've pre-ridden day one, we're going to ask you to ride a little bit extra stuff. So just pay attention to those notes and do what it asks you to do. You have to ride a bonus section. Instead of them being all optional, maybe one or two of them are mandatory, and that's going to depend upon your team size. Now, all of this stuff is prone to negotiation. So you come to me and you say, well, I rode Robbers Roost once several years ago. Does that mean I have to do all this extra stuff? No, probably not. But if you're like me and you live here and you ride that stuff all the time, that gives you a huge advantage over people who have never ridden any of that stuff. And I'm going to say you're going to have to do some of that extra stuff. If you pre-ride day one, and which we have always recommended that people do, and I'm still going to recommend that, we're going to ask you that, okay, you really need to ride some of this extra stuff so that it makes the playing field level. We got a team coming from Europe this year. Those guys haven't ever ridden any of this stuff before. They don't even know what it's like. It's difficult to describe to people that don't know exactly how bumpy day one is and how much it shreds tires. So if you've already done some of that stuff, you already have some insight that newbies just don't have at all. So level the playing field a little bit. But all that stuff is prone to is open negotiation. We'll talk about it. So if you have any questions about that, you let me know and we'll work it out. Now, this year, day one, still a long day. You're going to get to Pocatello, but you have a half a day off on day two. And so you can get to Pocatello Power Sports, get some stuff done early in the morning. As always, if you let those guys know you're coming, make an appointment, they can get you in and out. And all you have to do is be on your bike by, I'd say, 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and you can still be back here by 7 o'clock at night pretty easy. There's only 2 challenge points for day 2, one on top of Scout Mountain and one on top of Kimport Peak. There's a really nice knoll on your way back into town that you'll like. That's a fast loop. It's a loop that I do in the afternoon a lot. Generally, the time I start around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and I'm always back by around 6. Now, it's a little really well, so my riding experience is going to be a little bit different than yours. But I ride that loop all the time. It's a great loop. You won't have any trouble with it, and you'll enjoy the heck out of it. And the bonus section, again, is mandatory for locals or for returning teams. I want you to do the bonus section. The bonus is actually kind of cool. I think you'll like it. Onward. So day 3. So the first part of day 3, once again, is just a drone into American Falls. You're going to get out, ride over the, Trail Creek Road, ride out Mashad Creek, and then just hit farm roads to take you into American Falls. Try to be in American Falls by sunup. I think that would be the wise thing. We cut a lot of the desert stuff out. A lot of it's on private land, and for a long time it was okay, but people kept going. A lot of our fellow power sports users are not good stewards. They don't make a very good impression, and we've gotten kicked out of a lot of that stuff that was out there in the desert, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I don't want any of you. I still ride some of that stuff because I know the people out there, and they don't fuss at me very much, but I don't want you getting in trouble. Hello, Caleb. So we avoid a lot of that desert stuff. Then the other thing is the last few years has been so dry. I've been really concerned about starting fires out there, riding through some of the sagebrush when we took you on some of those cow paths. Oh, that was the other point I wanted to make a while ago. This year's looking like a great year. It's been raining here a ton. Mostly up north, they're completely out of the drought. So once you get across the Snake River Plain, you're starting to get into places that have lots of moisture. Everybody's telling me they can't saw yet because there's snow down to 8,000 feet everywhere in central Idaho. It depends a little bit from range to range, but 8,000, 9,000 feet is what I'm generally hearing of is snow level. So it's going to be a little late getting some of this stuff sawed this year. That's the bad news. The good news is I don't see, I'm looking at the long-term forecasts. I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that we're going to have a big-time fire season this year. There's always fires, but this might be like it was a couple of years ago when we had 2 seasons where we didn't have any fires along the route at all. That was just a few years ago. So fingers crossed, I think this year we might actually be able to get ourselves all the way along the route that we plan without any fire detours. I see JJ says snow, hail, and ketchup yesterday. Dwayne says North Idaho's over 200% snow load this year. I visited Justin Smith, who is a big Rally Raid guy over in Ten Sleep, a friend of mine on the internet for years, member of the Tour of Idaho community, and I went to his brewery and hung out a little bit while we were over and back. And those guys said they have never seen Wyoming as lush and green as it is right now. And for those of you who don't live here, Idaho's the same way. When we came back, I was kind of used to coming back this time of year, seeing the hills brown up. As we were driving back this afternoon, everything is still green. It's pretty incredible. So, but we avoid a lot of the stuff, the sandy stuff we used to do in the desert. Some of it's still there, mainly the Lake Channel Bowl. But then we get you back on quad trails and stuff like that, keep you out of the goat trails and the sagebrush. You head way up north, you're going to hit that mystery section. And there are no challenge points anywhere in that mystery section. There's a challenge point at the Lake Channel entrance. That's a pretty famous one where you ride down the Little Rock Chute. The next challenge point is actually after Arco, up at Arco Pass. That's an existing one. And then Deer Creek Pass, which is on those quad trails that are north of Arco. There's one up there. Then after that, there's not challenge point. There's challenge trails. And so you can just take a picture anywhere you want along this trail. But I don't want you uploading those right away. You can upload those later. We'll upload them at the end of the season or something. We'll just have a section dedicated on the forum, or we'll have a section on the Tour of Idaho Facebook page. But I don't want you to upload your photos for those mystery trails. So there's a Mystery Trail 1, Mystery Trail 2, Mystery Trail 3. There's 3 really cool single-track trails that you're going to do on your way to Mysteryville that night. And they're 3 separate trails. They're easily distinguishable from each other because you have to hit intersections and you have to take another one. And these trails are some of the coolest trails you're ever going to ride in your life. You'll be tempted to take photographs everywhere, which is why I didn't put challenge points on it. I just said the whole trail is worthy of a challenge point. So take photographs anywhere you want, and then later on, after the tour season's over, we'll upload them all somewhere. Section of the calendar devoted to them. Day 3, by the way, does not have a challenge section. It's a long enough day that I wanted you to be able to get to Mysteryville in a reasonable amount of time. There was an obvious challenge section that I could have put on there, but it would probably get you in Mysteryville around midnight. And I don't want to do that to those people that are up there. I want to make it easy peasy lemon squeezy, both for them and for you, especially the first time through when you were kind of watching this thing to see how it works. So this year I made that day 3 a little bit easier than I might make it next year, just because I want to get a feel for how quickly teams can get through this stuff. But I don't think you're going to have too much trouble. I think you'll get to Mysteryville fairly early and you'll be jazzed when you get there. Since we're not really telling anybody where you're going on this day, when you get there, if you discover you've ridden those trails before, that's your good fortune. I'm not going to penalize anybody for any of these trails. So on these mystery days, it's up to you. Now, that's on day 3. And that's not, let me correct that. That's on day 3. It's not necessarily in every mystery day. Now, what are we going to do about PLB tracking? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I want you to turn it off because I'll have to disqualify you if you leave the thing on. So a lot of people said, well, why don't we just make the portion of it? Easiest thing is when you get to Arco Pass, there is a challenge point there, or Deer Creek Pass. That's the last challenge point before you hit the mystery section. You get there, you get off, you take your fee, turn your PLB off. or at least deactivate tracking on it. You can leave the thing on so you can upload messages, but just turn tracking off. But I would really hate to have to DQ anybody because you left your tracking on. If you leave your tracking on, we're all going to be able to see it, and it's going to take the mystery route section out of it. So please be sure that somewhere north of Arco, at one of those 2 challenge points before you get to the mystery section, you turn off your PLB tractor, and you're not required. In fact, I don't want you to upload any photographs from the mystery section while you're on the tour. We'll do something about that after tour season is over. Now, day 4, you're going to start in Mysteryville. You're going to ride some more really cool trails. Right out of the gate, you are going to ride some of the coolest trails I've ever ridden in my life. These are just awesome freaking trails. And they're not even that hard. Some of the stuff at the end of day 3, there's some technicality to it. There's a little bit of gnarliness to 1 or 2 of those trails, but just in short sections, and they're more spectacular than they are gnarly. Nobody that's gotten that far is going to have any trouble with any of this stuff. But the stuff the next day, the beginning of day 4, is just, man, it's a riot. You can just rail some of that stuff. It's long. You're going to be happy when you get to the end of some of these single tracks. There's one that's, geez-o Pete, I don't know, maybe 15 miles long. It goes forever. I remember when I rode it last fall, getting down there and going, geez-o Pete, how much longer does this thing go on? Then you get on some Jeep roads, and the Jeep roads are as cool as a single track. They're just spectacular stuff. You keep hitting 10,000-foot passes all throughout day 4. So day 4 is going to roll you around. You're going to go across a couple of big valleys. There's some long transfer sections. But the single track, when you get to it, is very worthwhile, and it's kind of lengthy. So on day 4, again, there's just a whole bunch of mystery trails on there that count as challenge points. And if you ride the whole thing, you're going to get all of them. Take photographs wherever you want. When I look at your tracks later on, if you rode all the trails, you get all those points, so you don't have to worry about it. The only one that is formally a point is Wet Creek Basin. It's one that we used last year. You're going to come back in and loop in and go up over. Before you go down into Mackey, there's one from last year. And also on that day, there's a bonus loop. That Bear Creek Trail is a bonus trail this year. Now, there are 4 bonus sections and a challenge section on this day. Nope, sorry, there's 3 bonus sections and a challenge section this day. There's an A, a B, and a C. And there's also a challenge section. Now, the first bonus section, I'll get to that in a minute, Drew. You can turn tracking on again. I'll do it right now. Whenever you're out of the mystery section, whenever you're back in the world. So at this play, on day 4, it's when you get back to that Wet Creek Basin. When you're back where there are actual waypoints on the map, you can tracking back on again. And that's going to start down the Peshimroy Valley. Anytime after you hit the Peshimroy Valley, you want to turn on tracking, you knock yourself out. You can turn it on, but definitely make sure you turn it on by the time you get to that challenge point. By the way, for those of you who are worried about that, we're riding along, we don't have our tracking on, you can always, in fact, I will tell you this during the riders' meetings that we're going to have this year. I want you to be keeping me apprised of where you're at through your PLB or through your cell phone if it happens to work. So you're welcome to send me messages. After I tell you this is where the route goes, I'm going to say, when you get to this particular pass, will you please ping me and let me know that you're there? That way I can keep track of you. And if I don't hear from you, then I'm going to come looking for you. I or somebody else will be coming down the trail to look. So the entire world's not going to know where you're at, but I'm going to know where you're at, and a few other people that I've dragooned into helping me out. So on day 4, the first bonus section is a booger, man. It is long. It is a 40-mile long bonus section, but it goes to some really, really cool places. Now, one thing that you can do is you can combine the challenge section with the bonus section. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The challenge section, the bonus section, that first one, it's kind of cool. Oh, there's a little out and back, too. The first challenge section is actually just a little out and back. First one's really hard. So the A, It takes you up to a little, it's just a little spur trail that goes up to a lookout, and it'll keep you on your toes. The second one is this really long loop that goes to an incredibly cool place, but it will take you a while. It's 40 miles. So the thing that you have to be worried about is fuel capacity if you decide to do the second one, because it's a fairly lengthy detour from the standard route. Now, you could combine the second bonus section with the challenge section if you wanted to, or you can just do the challenge section or just do the bonus section. And I'll make that more clear when I send you your map and I send you the directions to that day. The challenge section is not as bad as it used to be. When I went up to ride that trail the first time, people were like, oh my goodness gracious, this is like the worst trail in the universe. They took a lot of the really nasty stuff out of it. It'll still keep you on your toes. It's a fairly stimulating challenge section. It's worthy of being a challenge section, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. So once you get up there, when you see the trail sign, if you've heard horror stories about this trail, you can dial it back a little bit. It's not as bad as it used to be. So I don't know. That's a decision you'll have to make when you get there. It's a good day to do a challenge section. It's a good day to do a bonus section, depending on when you get there. The first bonus section, I absolutely would do because it's a short out and back. It's just a few miles. It's kind of hard, but it's worth doing. And I wouldn't even object it if you unloaded your bike and just rode your empty bike up to do it if you wanted to, if you thought that would make it easier for you. Second one kind of depends on when you get there. If you get there noonish or something like that, it's worth considering the challenge section and the bonus section. If you get there much after that, I think I'd just keep on going because it's a long way. There's a lot of transfer sections, but you still got to ride them, and it still takes you a while to get across them. And I think it's a good day to get into Mackey kind of early because you're going to have some long days getting there. So that's it for day 4, and then there's some notes. Returning teams or teams that have pre-ridden any portion of day 4 must do at least one bonus section. That means have pre-ridden any of the stuff that's on the map. Again, the stuff that you don't know about, I don't care. If you get there and you find out, I rode this trail, I don't care. I'm not going to penalize you for that because you don't know where it is. You don't know what's coming. So it's not like you could go out, next month and pre-ride it just before your trip. So what I'm talking about on day 4 is stuff that is already on the map, and that's just that last bit of stuff in the Mackey. So the only people that'll probably affect are returning teams. So if you pre-rid any of that, you're probably going to have to do that Bear Lake loop, or if you know that's coming and you want to do the others, depending upon your team size, there's some extra things that you can do. Really, this doesn't affect soloists that much. It affects 2-person teams just a little bit more. 3-person teams are the teams that have to really be concerned about this because they're going to have to ride a lot more bonus sections than the soloists or the single-person teams. All right. So again, disable PLB tracking all through day 4 until you get back to the Peshimroy Valley and you're back on the map again. Do not disable your tracking. You should have a GPS that's dedicated just to tracking. Your PLB should be dedicated to letting everybody know where you are. You should have at least 2 other GPSs tracking you. Just don't share those tracks with anybody but me. That's the only thing I ask. You send them to me at the end of the tour, and then that's the end of it. All right, so now we're on day 5. Day 5 this year goes from Mackey to Smoky Bar Store, and you have an optional side trip that you can take into Haley to Carl Malone Power Sports and see the nice people there. Something I recommend you do. When Jeff Jensen and I talked about this day this year, this day 5, our first thought, or my first thought was there's a lot of cool trails west of Ketchum that we don't use. And Jeff did a lot of work and came up with some great stuff. And then we thought about it and said, well, it's better to get people in there early, first of all, because it's helpful to Kayla. Smoky Bar Store is an incredibly cool place to be, so we'd like to get you in there early. And also, by starting from Mackey and not adding any trail, that gives you a pretty good amount of time to spend in Haley getting your bike taken care of. So it's basic. I wouldn't say it's a half day this year, but I'd say it's 2/3 of what it was last year. So you'll have 90 minutes to spend and Haley getting your bike taken care of. You'll still have plenty of time to get to Smoky Bar Store by 6 or 7 at night. So you should be good to go. So on day 5, same as last year, there's a challenge point at the Stewart Canyon Corral Creek Pass right up top there. This year, it's about the 3rd or 4th place you hit 10,000 feet. In previous years, that was the 1st place. Wild Horse Lookout is still on there. For those of you who disdain quad trails, Wild Horse Lookout might be an eye-opener for you. Burn Aspen Cane Creek Pass, one of the most scenic places on the tour. Cliff View, there's photographs of that all over the Mojazz website. That's west of Ketchum. You'll see it up above Red Warrior and all that stuff. Big Peak Creek, that's only if you're doing the challenge section, and it's only required if you are on a 3-person team, and you'll know it when you get there. You're riding down, you do this weird side hilling and stuff, then you get into the creek, and all of a sudden you're in this golden, it's just boulder den. It's incredible. I do not think Kalen would be interested in ordering tires. There's 2 things wrong with that. First of all, there's a shop you can go to that we've already fixed that up. Second of all, I don't want people changing oil, changing tires, doing things like that in these little places out in the middle of nowhere. Somebody's got to haul those tires off. Somebody's got to get rid of that used oil and stuff like that. And I know that most of you are responsible enough that you would figure out a way to make it worth somebody's while to do that. But we had a guy a few years ago that we had a small business located along the tour who went out of business that year. I felt real bad about it. These little businesses are barely hanging on. So if you ask them to do something like that, it's like asking somebody, do you mind meeting me at 2 a.m? They'll say yes because they need your money, but nobody wants to do stuff like that. So we had this guy a couple years ago decided to ship a bunch of stuff to this little store in the middle of nowhere, which is, of course, a violation of Challenge Point rules, but he didn't care. They told me they got like 12 boxes of stuff. And they went to this guy's cabin after he left, and he had changed the oil on the front porch of his cabin, left all the oil just sitting out in the front porch, left tires there, had washed motorcycle parts in the sink in his room. There was oil all over the place. And I about lost my mind over that. I thought I was absolutely going to take a railroad spike and drive it through my kneecap when I heard about that. And the worst part is that guy was barely hanging on, and he had to close that business that year. So, Sean, I know you are a super responsible guy and you wouldn't do anything like that, but we are going to make sure that we have motorcycle shops do motorcycle maintenance. That way we don't put any of these people, we don't put Kalen or the people at the Village of North Fork, anybody in a bad spot where people are trying to do, maintenance in their hotel room or maintenance in the parking lot and oil gets spilled and people get upset. So it's better just to have that stuff done at motorcycle shops, and that's what we're trying to do. That's why we've made the arrangements we've made. There is a challenge section on day 5. Jensen seems to think it's no problem. It's been a bunch of years since I've done it, but I thought the thing was pretty gnarly. It's gnarly up at the top. There's some stuff up there that'll keep you on your toes. It's really gnarly when you get down into that damn creek. I have a long story about that creek. The coldest night of my entire life was not spent in the mountains. It was spent riding 40 miles back to my truck with my clothes all frozen solid as a result of an unfortunate get off in that damn creek. So then day 6, there are 8 challenge points for soloists and 2-person teams and 9 for 3-person teams. Now, day 6 is an interesting day because it's a long day. So you got to go all the way to Chalice, and it's longer than you think. Most people think when they get to Sawmill Station, we got it made. Easy peasy lemon squeezy from here. That's not the case. You got a hell of a long way to go after Sawmill Station. So when you get there, don't loiter. Get a sandwich, get something to drink, talk to Ross, then get back on your bike and go. There are some bonus sections there. There's also a Germania Creek. We have on the maps in purple, that's not a bonus. That's a situational alternative. Every once in a while, Grand Prize Gulch gets closed, so you can take Germania if that's the case, but you're way better off taking Germania. It's a much better trail. It's not as technical. It's a lot more fun. It's faster. It's more scenic. You'll like it. There's a bonus section down there at Bowery, and those two Texas guys last year did that. I have no idea why they did it. It's not the most technical thing in the world, but it's super steep. It's a little hard to find in some places. And it'll really make your radiator hot getting up that damn hill. After that, you have Big Boulder, Little Boulder. There's the iconic shot in the meadow there. Let me just go right through them. So Paradise Peak, there's a challenge point there up near the top. At the Salmon Headwaters, and there's waypoints there. Grand Prize Gulch, West Fork Pass. Again, there's a waypoint there that tells you where it's at. Castle Merriman View, that's up Little Boulder Creek. Little Boulder, Big Boulder Pass, there's a waypoint there that tells you right where it's at, but it's obvious. Railroad Ridge, 10-444, high point of the tour. Thompson Cinnabar Meadow, there's a pretty iconic view there, and there's a waypoint real close to it. 11-mile McKay Divide, that's only if you're on the three-person route that's required. Then finally, Ramshorn. Way up the top of Ramshorn, there's a really nice panoramic. You can spin your camera if you have that 360-degree thing on it, and you can get yourself a hell of a panorama where you can see like 5 days of the tour from one spot. It's pretty cool. So again, there's that Bowery bonus section. There is an out and back up there near 11-mile McKay Creek. And then there's a final bonus section that's a little hard to find. I don't recommend trying the third one. I've never been in there when it was completely sawed, and it's hard to find anyway. But the first one, those guys did it last year, and they still made it on time, which is okay. I wouldn't do it. The second one, if you need a half a point, is the one to do because it's really fast. You can get out there and back in 45 minutes. Easy peasy lemon squeeze. You're just riding out to the boundary of the wilderness area. You go up a hill, and there's a sign, but it's always torn down. But you'll start up a hill out there, and when you feel like you're getting close to the wilderness boundary, just turn around and come back out. The tire tracks will go for miles, but you just have to ride to the wilderness area and back, and I think there's even a waypoint up there that tells you where to go. And then the third one I wouldn't recommend either, just because I've never been back in there when it was sawed. Let's see, what did I say about that? You have to do one of these bonus sections. And, I didn't say whether, on that day, I didn't say whether it had to be a 1 point or a half a point. So on that day, if you have pre-rid those trails and you need to do a bonus section, I'm not going to make you do Bowery. I'm not going to make you do the weird one that's hardly ever sawed. You can do that half point one if you want to. If you're doing it just as a bonus, it'll only count a half a point. But if you're a returning team and you just need to do it because you need to ride up a little bit because you've been there before, do the out and back. I think that's a pretty fair compromise right there. All right. That gets us into day 7, and day 7 is half mystery day. So we're using all the same challenge points that we've done before. Twin Peaks, you go up to the lookout. You'll probably be there before the sun comes up. Eddy Basin, Furnace Creek, Van Horn Peak, Alder Creek, Corral Creek, Taylor Mountain. Those are all completely obvious places. And in many places, there's actually a waypoint there. The one that I would caution you about is the Van Horn Peak. You're really going to want to be careful about riding that area there because it's very easy to ride yourself half off a cliff if you're not careful. And one of the reasons I put the challenge point where I did is to get you to stop and hopefully recognize that you've ridden beyond where the trail cuts back over your left shoulder. Let's see. So yeah, after that, there's mystery trails. And again, if you ride the trail, you'll get the point. There is a challenge section that day, and I'll get into that with you when I tell you where you're going to go. I'll give you the maps. It's part of the regular route if you ride it in one direction. It's a loop, but it's a challenge section if you ride it in the opposite direction. So one way, it's just a regular part of the route. The other way it counts as a challenge section. That might be a challenge section that I would do if I were you, because it's bumpy, but it's not anything you can't get up. It's just you're going to get tired riding over rocks. It's about 6 miles up a fairly rocky trail. But that would be one I would consider doing if I needed a challenge section. And you got to ride it anyway. I mean, you're going to have to ride the loop in one direction or the other. You might as well shorten your work by just doing a little bit of extra work, riding up the hill, and get in a challenge section and get the loop out of the way at the same time. In fact, it shortens it. If you do it as a challenge section, you actually eliminate a little bit of trail that you would otherwise have to ride. So it's a little shorter to do it as a challenge section. Goes to an incredible place. You're really going to dig the heck out of it. And then finally, when you cross the 45th parallel, it's very obvious where it is. You're on kind of a Jeep trail, but the 45th parallel is a challenge point too. So when your GPS tells you that you're near the 45th parallel, just stop and snap a photograph there, and you should be good to go. There are some bonus sections that day. I'll get into those more when we start talking about where you're going to go. The first one I can tell you about right now, the first two. The first one is we don't go past Iron Lake anymore. We head out a little single track trail that takes you down to PLT. So if you want to ride up to Iron Lake, which is the way we used to do, there's a 1 point bonus in that for you. I made it worth a half point, but there's a half point bonus there. I would absolutely plan on doing that. It's the easiest half point you're going to get on the tour. Take you about 15 minutes to get up there and back. Super simple, easy trail. You won't have any trouble. The second one, let's see. Why do I have B, C, D, and E when it should be A, B, C, and D? But anyway, the first one, I know for a fact that there is one. Oh, I know why it is, because I had an A section that was a variant earlier on. So the B is just up to Iron Lake and back. The C goes to that lookout up there where you could look back up to Taylor Mountain. This year, that's another one I would absolutely do. That's another half pointer, but this year, instead of having like a 6 mile ride to get to it, it's 2 miles up and back. So it's a 4 mile loop. It's really fast. You ride right by, you're literally, I think you're 2 miles from the lookout at closest approach. You just ride up that road, ride back down. Ought to take you a half an hour or so. And if you did those two, you would have a full point bonus there. And then D and E, I'll tell you what those are going to be when you get there. There's a couple of trails that you could do. I wouldn't recommend either of them, but there are a couple trails you could do if you need some bonus points at that point that are in the mystery section, which will take you into Salmon. Disable your PLB tracking as soon as you get down to the paved highway. So when you come down out of PLT and all that, come down Hat Creek, you're going to come down to the paved road. When you get to the paved road, disable your PLB tracking right there, and then don't enable it until you get into Salmon. You can just ride all the way into Salmon with it turned off. So day 8 is a half a day, and again, as long as you get out of Salmon by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, you should easily be able to get to the village at North Fork in time for dinner. There's only a couple of challenge points that I put in there. There's the Wallace Lake View, which we've always used. And there's that Leesburg interpretive sign. A lot of you know where that is. As you're riding down through Leesburg on the right side of the road, there's an old cabin there, and there's a series of interpretive signs. That's where I put the challenge point. There's a couple of cool single track trails that you get to ride that day, but most of it's just pretty fast transfer section. Doesn't have a bonus section, doesn't have a challenge section, and I don't care if you've ridden I don't care if you ride that stuff all the time. There's nothing extra for you to do that day. Just get yourself to the village at North Fork. Day 9, I predict this will be one of everybody's favorite days of the tour. These are some of my favorite trails anywhere. They're awesome trails. I ride them a lot, and I've never gotten tired of this area. I'm a big one for I don't like to ride the same trails over and over because I'm not going to live forever, and I kind of like to see new trails. My favorite thing is discovering new trails. But I make an exception to the rule for stuff that's in my backyard just because it's convenient. And this stuff at North Fork, I'll probably go up this summer and ride all this stuff again myself just because it's such awesome trail. It's really cool stuff. So first thing in the morning, you hit Ulysses Lookout pretty early. I don't know about going up into the lookout anymore. I was there last summer, and man, my 5-year-old and I climbed a long way up there, but it's getting pretty rickety, and there were horse flies all over the place. That was the bigger hazard last year. We got bitten pretty good trying to climb up into the top. Indian Peak, that's an easy one to get to. Ridge View, there's a big monument up on there's a big monument up on the Divide Trail. It's on your right. It's obvious. You'll see it. Granite Mountain, there's a lookout there. We talked the last time about different ways to get to Granite Mountain, depending upon whether you're going to do the challenge section, whether you're going to do a bonus section, or whether you're just going to stick to the regular route. There's different options to get to Granite Mountain, but you got to get to Granite Mountain one way or the other, because there is a challenge point there. Divide Trail view. There's a very, very spectacular view between waypoints 67 and 68. You'll know it when you see it. There's photographs of it on the Mojazz website. Kind of a little side hilly place there, and you're looking out across the divide. It's very cool. Lick Creek, Sheep Creek Divide, that's up there on that divide on that Powder Gulch Trail. Right up the top, there's a little out and back to a really scenic point up there. Steen Mountain, the lookout up there, that's a challenge point. I put a new one on this year. There's a cabin way back in the woods back there. You got to do a little out and back to get to it, but it's a cool place. It's worth going back there to see. And then there's that side hill that comes around above Sheep Creek. That's you can take a photo anywhere you want in that side hill. There's several pretty spectacular places. And if there happens to be a grizzly bear in your photograph, I may give you another bonus just for that. One time I was riding that side hill, coming in from the opposite direction, and I saw bear prints. Said, well, it's been a bear here lately. And it turned out it hadn't been a bear here lately. It was a bear here right now, because I came around a corner and he was standing there looking at me. And that was kind of odd, because if you've been to that place before, you know there's not a lot of options about where to go. So he looked at me and I looked at him, and I guess he decided he'd had enough of me. I smelled bad or looked too skinny to eat or something, but he took off and ran down to Sheep Creek, and I was able to go on by. What else? There are some bonus sections that day, and they're both worth doing. Both the bonuses that day, we talked about those a little bit when we went through the route a couple weeks ago. Both of the bonuses are worth doing. The 3 Mile Ridge bonus, I would recommend that you do. So you cross Highway 93 up there, and you come down the Jeep Road, and you get back on the Divide Trail, and right where it turns to single track, you can go down this ridge, and then you can ride all the way down to the road, and I think it's Dallahanga Road is what it's called. Then you can turn around and ride up something called 3 Mile Ridge. That one I would absolutely plan on doing. It's better than the trail it replaces, and I made it a bonus just to encourage you to ride it, because and you should do it. You should count on doing that one. All right. So then day 10. Day 10 is the day that takes you over to either Elk City or Lowell. It has a CS. Returning teams are not required to ride anything on day 10. There's not anything else out there. It's just a long, I consider it mostly transfer section. The cool stuff's all first thing in the morning. You ride up Henderson Ridge up to the Divide Trail, and there's a challenge point up there. There's a challenge point at Blue Nose Lookout that's only required for 2 and 3 member teams. There's one at Nez Perce Pass, which is paved road. Burnt Knob Lookout, a little side trip. Red River View, there's one there that's on a quad trail. Anderson Butte, there's really nothing out there. It's just sort of a clearing in the woods. There are some bonus sections. The Salmon Mountain is one that a lot of people do. If you have time, the Salmon Mountain, if you brought a set of sneakers with you, it's kind of a cool thing to do. I've done it a couple times, and it's kind of fun. It sort of punctuates the ride with a little bit of a hike, and it won't take you very long to get out there at all. It's not really uphill that much. You can about jog it. It's kind of cool out there. Let's see. The challenge section that day. So that's another one that's been, they've gone in there and they've done some work on it, so I've been told. I haven't ridden that one in 3 or 4 years. The last time I rode it, it was the worst nightmare that bad dreams were capable of conjuring. It's a really nice trail until you get into about the last 2 miles of it. Then there's this section that we call the Erzberg Rodeo section where you're riding through these boulders and buckgrass and stuff for about a quarter of a mile. That's pretty interesting. Then you just got into this thicket of down trees and stuff, and it was just a nightmare trying to figure out a way to cut your way through it. I ran out of saw gas trying to saw my way the last half mile down to the road. But I have been told that there's been some rerouting done in there, and that trail is no longer as gnarly as it used to be. I'll try to go ride it this summer, and I'll give you some firsthand info on it. And if anybody else has ridden it any more recently than me, hello, Ed, then you can feel free to chime in. But the last time I rode that, it was something I would not have wanted to do on a fully loaded tour bike in the middle of what is a long day anyway, because it adds quite a bit of length to it, which means that fuel becomes even more of an issue, and it adds quite a bit of time to it. Again, all you got to do that day is basically you want to get across the wilderness corridor there, and you want to get yourself to either Elk City or Lowell as quickly as you can. Now, day 10, day 11. Day 11 is the day where you can go a whole bunch of different ways. I think there's identified 20 different ways that you could put that day together. And we talked about this quite a bit on the last PBR Monday. All I will tell you is there are some trails that I would definitely avoid. I would avoid Ant Hill unless I was going down it. I would avoid Pot Mountain. Pot Mountain will give you all you want, especially in a fully loaded tour bike. I haven't done the whole thing, but just the parts that I did were enough to convince me that this is a real beast of a trail right here. And then there's another one up there, Elizabeth Mountain, which is also on there. I don't know very much about that, but I've heard it's fairly stout as well. Very technical. But all the rest of those trails are okay. The Fish Butte Trail is cool. It's got some side hilling on it, but it's fun. Ant Hill's okay if you're going down, not up. Sherman Creek is okay down. It's harder up. But if you're on a 2 or 3 person team, you could manage the hard section. Fish Creek Cabin, that's got some interesting side hilling on it, and there's some like steps up over the creek that you got to pay attention to, but if you've gotten that far, you won't have any trouble with that. Weatis Guard Station is kind of a cool trail. Last time I did it, I thought that trail was great. Now, again, my knowledge of that trail is 6 or 7 years old, but I like that trail. I thought it's like a lot of those trails up there. It's long. It's not incredibly technical. You're out there a long time, but it's mostly kind of fast, flowy stuff. Windy Bill Saddle, most of you know about that. Castle Creek Lookout is right off of the Lolo Motorway. There's nothing to that. It's a Jeep trail. Scurvy Lookout, that's a quad trail that goes up there. The Rock Garden Trail, now that's a man trail. There's a couple of real high energy switchbacks getting out to it. And then the Rock Garden itself is not a whole lot of fun. It also doesn't get ridden a lot, so you might plan on sawing your way across it. Then Cook Mountain is an awesome trail. What else? Am I missing a trail there? Well, I think those are the ones I put out there that were worth challenge points. There are more trails that are out there. But if you ride any of those trails, they count as a challenge point. And I think I said you're required to get 12 that day in some way. There is no challenge section that day. We took it off. You could put it together whatever way you want. I want to go up and ride Pot Mountain this summer. I think next year, for last year, the tour, we may make that the challenge section for that day. And then the only difference is, depending on your team size, you will be required to can you ride a trail both directions for 2 points? No. You can ride it one way or the other, but if you do it as an out and back, it just counts as 1 point. That's a good question. Thanks for asking it. But now, as always, it kind of depends. Like if you have something specific, like if you had a specific way that you wanted to put something together, and I thought it was worth 2 points. Just let me know what it is that you intend to do, and I'll render an opinion on it. But the way I think that the way to keep it simple is just to say you get a point if you ride this trail, and it doesn't matter which way you ride it. Day 12 is entirely to be announced. There will be some challenge sections there, or there'll be actually challenge points. And there will be not one, but 2 challenge sections on that day. And we'll tell you all about that when you get there. So all of day 12, PLB tracking is off. No PLB tracking anywhere in day 12. Day 11, you can have your PLB on the whole way. It's only in the mystery sections that we want your PLB off. So you have your PLB off in the special nav section out in the desert, south of Arco, north of American Falls, south of Arco. You turn it off when you're going into Mysteryville, north of Arco. You turn it off on the next day until you get close to Mackey, where you can turn it back on again. You turn it off when you get down to 93 on that day from Chalice to Salmon. You turn it off, and then you keep it on all the way until you get to this day 12. You turn it off that whole day. So you can turn it back on when you get to Moon Pass and you're coasting down the hill to see Donna. And then finally, day 13. I don't think I ever talked about day 13 in detail on a PBR Monday, and that's because day 13 hasn't changed in years. It's the same as it's always been. There's, 5 of them? Moon Saddle, Spyglass Peak, Jackknife Peak, Hoodoo Mountain, and Sundance Lookout. And it's pretty obvious in all those places where you need to go. Last year, I actually had guys that were said to be PMs going, exactly where do I need to be in Spyglass Peak? I don't care. Just ride up there somewhere, get a good view, and take the photo. On Hoodoo Mountain, there's an electronic sight right at the top. There's a very cool view up there. So I'd recommend that you go up to that. But Spyglass, Jackknife, Moon Saddle, all that stuff, just find a place along the route somewhere that looks good and take the photo. Now, the idea, again, behind all this is it's to make it fun, and it's to kind of level the playing field. So if you have any questions about something, either before or while you're on the route, feel free to send me a message. That's why I don't go anywhere during tour season, so I can monitor your progress. And if you have any questions, I can answer them, and I will be more than happy to render a decision. So, David just asked a question a few minutes ago. David Green, can we ride a trail out and back for 2 points? In general, the answer to that's probably no. But, tell me what it is that you want to do, and, we'll give it some thought. There are very few things that are etched in stone about the Tour of Idaho. The one thing that is absolutely etched in stone is you cannot have outside help unless it's serendipitous. You run out of gas and somebody comes along, you're able to convince them to sell you or give you some. That's serendipity. That's allowed. You paid somebody to drop a 5-gallon can of gas off and hide it in the woods beside the road, which I know has happened before. That's not serendipity. That's a violation of challenge point rules. Day 10, there is a bonus challenge section depending on which way you ride. Can you grab the bonus point, then ride back up for the challenge section? Let's go back and see what day 10 is. I think I know what you're talking about. There is... Can you grab the bonus point, then ride back up the challenge section if you decide after riding down? That's what's the name of that trail? I don't have it on the challenge point page. You could do that if you want to. I know what you're thinking. I would not advise it at all. I wouldn't advise having anything to do with that challenge section that day. If you come up with a more cogent plan and you want to PM me or email me and say, what would you think about this? I'll certainly render an opinion about how many points it would be worth. But I'm telling you right now, if it were me, David Green rides that stuff all the time, so he may have some more current knowledge than I have. But I would not have anything to do with that challenge section that day. And what's the hell's the name of that trail? I'm spacing it right now. I literally just got in about a half an hour before I turned on the lights here to start all this. So I still got road buzz. No, it's not ditch. It's the next day, David. It's that trail, that nasty trail that goes off the Divide Trail about halfway between Henderson Ridge and where you pop out on the road at Bluto's. It goes back down to the south, and it's got that boulder field. There's a cross at the top of the hill. You drop off that hill. Marlin Springs, that's what it is, Marlin Springs Trail. That's the challenge section trail for the day. And again, so my knowledge is old, but the last time I rode that trail, Marlin Springs was an absolute bear. Now, if you're talking about the day before that, the challenge section is Ditch Creek. And if that was your question, because I see that David put a note there, you got to figure out which way you want to ride it. If you want to ride it one way, it is a challenge. If you want to ride it the other way, it's a bonus. And it's one or the other. And you would really be knackering yourself if you tried to ride down ditch and back up it. You would not like that outcome, I don't think. It would make it a lot harder for you to do some other things. All right, so we've gone long on the night. I go long because, again, I'm still got road buzz here right now, so I'm kind of blowing bubbles a little bit. This is what I get like when I'm really tired. But I will entertain some questions if anybody has any. We'll have another PBR Monday next week. I'll come up with a topic. We're getting close now. You know, we're about a month out. And one thing I'll do next week is we'll talk about riders meetings. I want to have a series of riders meetings like we did last year. And make sure that I we're all looking at each other on a Zoom call face to face. Are you sure you understand what you have to do here? That way, I just think it cuts down on misunderstandings later on. So if you have questions, now's the time to ask. If I don't see any in the next 30 seconds or so, I'm going to go sleep for about 12 hours. I think I'm going to try to actually ride my dirt bike this week someplace besides the track in my backyard. So we'll see how all that goes. Tyler, sawmount thing. Ralph Jones, with the high snowpack, do you anticipate rivers to be high later in the season? I absolutely do. And I've been watching gauges in different places. And during the riders' meetings, I'm going to go through that specifically. These are places I would be very, very careful. There's one creek crossing right outside of Ketchum, so where you go across the creek there off of Warder Springs Road to hit Red Warrior and all that stuff. I would not ride across that this year. Jeff Jensen, I know you're watching. I know you've been back up in there. You've seen that stuff recently, but there are some creeks this year that I think are going to run high really late in the season, and I would be very cautious about that. So, Ralph, thanks for raising awareness of that. That's absolutely a concern I would have. Tyler, can't wait to see your saw mount. After the response I got, so I posted that little thing up on the Facebook page, right? And immediately turned into my saw is cooler than your saw, which is just, that stuff just drives me nuts. So I don't know if I'm going to post pictures of it or not. I may, by request, send you through the email a photograph of it so you can see it yourself. But the first person that says mine's better than yours, I'll take my saw out and beat them in the head with it. Anybody that carries a saw of any kind, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's one of those chintzy Boy Scout, little bow saws or something, that saws trees in the wood is doing all of the riding community a favor. And it doesn't matter what kind of saw you use. It doesn't matter how many trees you sawed. You went out, you tried to do something good. And how we get into this business where my saw is cooler than yours, or I don't know why you do this kind of crazy stuff. And there wasn't that much of it on our page, but it triggered these insane fights that I see all over the web where these guys are bagging on each other and they're all out sawing trees in the woods. How can that possibly be construed as a bad thing? And why is it that you want to measure the size of your dick by a saw? I just don't get any of that. So, yeah, don't get me going. All right, you guys, once again, you've wasted a perfectly good hour with a total knucklehead who's blowing bubbles tonight anyway. I don't know why the hell you all do this stuff, but I am tickled to death that you do. Thanks again to Team Your Mom last year for the excellent shirt, one of my all-time favorites. And I'm glad, Caleb, to see you tonight. Good to see all of you guys out there. And next week, I should be in a little bit better shape to talk coherently. So we will do one of these next Monday night. I'll post the topic and stuff. I'll try to get Josh to come on next week and tell you all about Carl Mullen Power Sports. Be seeing you.